following a nun named Fernanda who is taking a donkey to the church. After a while, when Fernanda reaches the church, we see another nun named Ginevra, with whom Fernanda starts talking. Ginevra asks Fernanda where she had gone at this time, to which Fernanda replies that the donkey had run away from the church, and she had gone outside to catch it. Hearing this answer, Ginevra looks at Fernanda suspiciously and asks how this donkey runs away from the church every day. This leads to a bit of an argument between the two. Just then, we see a gardener passing by. He lived nearby. He greets both nuns with a good morning, but they both get angry at him and start scolding him. So, the gardener quickly leaves. After this, Nun Ginevra goes to the head nun named Maria and complains about the donkey's escape, saying that she should be given the responsibility of handling the donkey. Then we see another nun named Alejandra who was sitting very peacefully in her room. In fact, Alejandra did not want to be imprisoned in this church. She wanted to go out and enjoy her life. Therefore, Alejandra often remained sad and silent in the church. The next day, Alejandra's father comes to meet her in the church. His name was Illyrio. He tells Alejandra that they are unable to find a groom for a wedding because every boy is demanding a dowry. In response, Alejandra says that if she reduces her donations to the church, they can arrange the money. However, Illyrio refuses to do this. Alejandra desperately wants to leave the church, but this is not possible, which makes her very sad. The next day, when Alejandra is going with some clothes made by the nuns, she appears very gloomy. Although the nuns ask her about her sadness, she does not answer. Meanwhile, the gardener comes in front of them and starts looking at them with dirty eyes. Seeing this, the three nuns get very angry and start hurling abuses at him, and then they beat him up. Here, we see Father Tommaso who is going to sell the clothes made by the nuns. When Tommaso is on his way, he meets the gardener who complains about the three nuns and says that he will no longer work him at church. Tommaso tries to convince him, but the gardener refuses and leaves. After this, we see Lord Bruno who is having dinner with his wife, Francisca. Bruno is discussing finances and other matters with Francisca, but all of Francisca's attention is on the servant standing nearby, and both of them are exchanging glances even in Bruno's presence, and later they even become intimate at night. In the meantime, Francisca tells the servant that Bruno is useless. He cannot do anything. Just as the servant moves forward to cheer her up, Bruno enters the room, but the servant quickly escapes through the back window and quietly lies down. Although Bruno saw someone escaping from the room, he did not know it was the servant, so he follows this person into the servant's quarters where the servant pretends to be sleeping. Bruno checks the servant's hearts to see whose is racing due to running, and when he checks the servant's heartbeat, it is very fast. But due to the darkness, Bruno cannot recognize him. Therefore, Bruno cuts off a few years from the servant to easily identify him later. As soon as Bruno leaves, the servant cuts the hair of all the other servants. So when Bruno comes the next morning to find the man from last night, he cannot recognize who the real person is. After a while, Francisca again goes to meet the servant and without delay reaches him. The servant is working out in the open, but Francisca, without any hesitation, starts to become intimate with him. And Bruno sees all of this and angrily orders his soldiers to capture the servant. Seeing this, the servant quickly runs towards the forest to save his life. But then he spots Father Tommaso, who is very drunk. Tommaso's cart had overturned, causing all the clothes to float in the river. So he hurriedly pulls the clothes out. Seeing this, the servant also goes to help Tommaso. Tommaso is very impressed by the servant's behavior and decides to take him to the church with him. But Tommaso tells the servant that he must pretend to be dumb and deaf, otherwise the nuns will trouble him a lot. The servant needed a hiding place, so he agrees to go with him to the church. The next morning, both of them reach the church and Tommaso introduces the servant to head nun Maria. At first, Maria refuses to allow the servant to stay in the church. But then, on Tommaso's insistence, she gives him a job as a gardener in the church. After this, he gets to work. However, when Nun Fernanda sees him, she raises an axe at him because she did not know that the servant had come to the church. Meanwhile, the other nuns come there, and Maria explains that he is the new gardener and that he cannot speak or hear. That night, Fernanda has a friend named Marta who comes to meet her, and both of them head to Alejandra's room to drink. After a while, Ginevra also arrives and joins them, and then all four of them sit together to have adult conversations. Marta talks about forming physical relationships and says it is the happiest moment in the world. In this way, all four discuss physical relationships, and Ginevra becomes so romantic with Fernanda that they start getting intimate with each other. The next morning, while digging the ground, Alexandra arrives. Alexandra thinks the servant is dumb and deaf, so she initially talks to him a little and then gets closer to him, starting to kiss him. The servant also gets into the mood, and they both begin to be intimate with each other in the open. But then the church bell rings, and Alexandra quickly puts on her clothes and leaves. Meanwhile, Fernanda and Ginevra are washing clothes when Alexandra comes there with her clothes, and the three of them start talking like the previous night, saying that they really enjoyed last night. When Fernanda sees Alexandra's clothes dirty with mud, she asks her about it. In response, Alexandra says that she was helping the dumb servant dig a hole, which is why her clothes got dirty. Hearing this, both are very surprised because they had never seen Alexandra working before. Anyway, one day, she sees her friend Marta heading towards the forest, so she starts following them and sees them making belladonna. In fact, belladonna is a leaf. They believe that if they consume this leaf, they can easily attract males. Marta puts just 2 drops of belladonna in Fernanda's eyes and then makes a small cut on her finger and starts drinking her blood. Seeing all this, Ginevra finds it quite strange. After this, Fernanda and Marta go to the servant's small room and start getting intimate with him, taking advantage of the opportunity and making him happy. After which both of them leave. The next day, the bishop arrives at the church for an investigation. Maria takes Tommaso to show the bishop the church, and just at that moment, the servant comes into the room and without delay, they both pounce on each other. But then an old nun arrives, and upon seeing her, the servant tries to hide. News spreads, and when the nun, surprised, speaks, Alexandra's gaze falls on the nun, and seeing this, she quickly tries to fix herself and help her. In fact, this nun had not seen the two of them, so they hide below to avoid being seen. When they try to escape through the window, Tommaso and Maria arrive. But after a while, when everyone leaves, the servant escapes. Meanwhile, we see Ginevra, who had made belladonna. She does not put it in her eyes, but drinks it, causing her mind to lose balance. And she cuts her hand and applies the blood on her cheeks. Meanwhile, she goes to meet Alexandra in her room and angrily asks why she lied about being dumb and deaf. The servant cannot explain anything before Ginevra arrives, and upon seeing her, Alexandra hides. Ginevra is under the influence of belladonna, so as soon as she comes to her senses, she starts kissing the servant, but then she hears Fernanda coming. This makes her quickly hide in a corner. However, she can still be seen from the corner. Both are shocked to see each other, but to avoid Fernanda, they remain silent. After this, Fernanda enters the room, threatening the servant with a knife and tying him up to take him into the forest. Seeing this, both follow Fernanda and reach the forest. Upon seeing the forest, they are stunned because there were many new witches dancing around the fire. They were dancing, and one of them was tied up with ropes. Ginevra realizes that Fernanda and Marta have brought the servant there to sacrifice him. Just as Fernanda is about to stab the servant with a knife, Ginevra comes in front of her and starts trying to stop the witch. However, due to being under the influence of the drug, she attacks her with a stick, causing Marta to fall unconscious. After this, she comes forward and tries to stop Fernanda from killing the servant. Seeing all this, the servant also cannot remain silent and says, "I am not dumb or deaf." Hearing this, Ginevra quickly goes towards the church and screams to gather everyone, revealing the truth. Hearing the noise, when the bishop comes out, Ginevra says that Fernanda is a witch. And just then, Fernanda, Alexandra, and the servant also arrive. When the bishop calls Maria outside, Father Tommaso also comes out of Maria's room. Everyone is astonished to see this. The next morning, as punishment, the bishop sends Tommaso to the men's church. The servant is handed over to Bruno, where he is imprisoned in a dark dungeon. The three nuns apologize to each other for their bad behavior. They care a lot for each other. Meanwhile, when the servant is in the dungeon, Bruno comes to tell him how he will be tortured in the future and also informs him about his wife being kept with wild boars and dogs. After Bruno leaves, a small turtle comes in carrying a candle on its back. In fact, this was a plan by the three nuns to divert the soldiers' attention. They dress up in the nuns' clothes and replace it with a dummy, escaping from there and heading into the forest. In the forest, Tommaso meets Maria. Both are very happy to see each other, but hearing a noise, they hide, and after they leave, they kiss each other, and the movie ends. Well friends, if you like this explanation of the movie, please like and share. If you want a link to that movie, join our Telegram channel, the link for which will be in the description. Also, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to not miss any upcoming videos. See you in the next video, children. Bye bye, take care.